everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for one of our Fortune 500 focused webinars here at the Retirement Group. My name is Samantha, and I am in client services here. I moderate these weekly webinars, and in just a moment, we will be joined by our advisor, Patrick Ray, and he's going to be speaking to you about the 7 things you should do before leaving your company. But before Patrick comes on, I would like to very quickly remind you that although we work very closely with both active and retired members of several Fortune 500 companies, the Retirement Group is not affiliated nor endorsed whatsoever by any specific company. We are a completely independent group of financial advisors, so please keep that in mind. After Patrick's presentation, I will rejoin him very quickly to ask him any of the questions you may have entered into the Q&A chat throughout his presentation. If you find you have a question while he's speaking, please feel free to ask away. It is 100% anonymous, and Patrick will answer as many questions as he can, time permitted. And with that, we are now going to bring Patrick on, and I'm going to turn off my camera so he can get started. Hey, Patrick.
Thank you, Sam. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. As Sam had mentioned, my name is Patrick Ray. I'm one of the senior advisors here at the Retirement Group, and we got a lot to cover today. Today is a form of a checklist we've been building for many, many years and helping folks like you transition into a successful retirement. And so we're going to talk about the 7 things that you should do or consider before you actually leave your company. And so one of those things, first and foremost, is to determine how much it is that you need to save. And this often goes overlooked in the general sense because many people put off doing the planning and the work that's needed to be comfortable in this transition until the very last of their time at the company that they work for. So in other words, if you wouldn't otherwise know that you were leaving the payroll at the end of the year, for example, maybe you would just continue to push this off because we're all busy and we have things going on in our lives on our daily basis. And so it makes it tough. And frankly, retirement is not the most, advantageous thing to discuss unless you're transitioning into retirement at that particular time. And so what we need to do, among other things, is to determine the amount of money that we need to save based on how much it is that we need to withdraw. And so if you think in terms of the percentage of money that you withdraw to live off of versus how much money you have, that number needs to be consistent with not only what's comfortable for you based on your tolerance for risk and your financial goals and your investment objectives, et cetera, but also to confirm that this will help you ensure that you do not run out of money while you're alive. And so, for example, when we run a cash flow analysis for you, which is one of the complementary tools that we utilize to help people transition into retirement, it would be done based on the theory that if you're comfortable with $1 million in your total portfolio and you're withdrawing 4%, assuming that's all pre-tax money from pensions and 401ks and such, that after taxes, you're getting roughly $3,000 a month. And you knew that the $3,000 a month from your investments plus the $2,000 a month, as an example, from your Social Security would be enough for you to live on after-tax funds, then you're in fine shape, right? And you can be comfortable knowing that those things are going to be consistent, hopefully, throughout your retirement. And so running a cash flow to determine the percentage of what you need to remove is one of the main priorities based on our goals of how much we need to save for retirement. And so the next most important thing is obviously how much you need to live off of. And this is one of the most variable questions because most people don't even know because they're comfortable getting a paycheck every 2 weeks or so. And they just know that what they get is a net from what they put in their 401ks and how much they save in outside investments and covering their expenses for health insurance, et cetera. And they know they get X amount of dollars and that's what they utilize. And so if someone were to ask you and you didn't really know what your actual need for income is, you could start with just saying, okay, I get $2,600 every 2 weeks net in my bank account. So that's $5,200 a year. And so therefore we can get you to around $74,000 or so as an annual income need for a start. And so what we have to do is we need to be determining a realistic goal for you based on the accumulation of your funds over your lifetime. And so we have to think in terms of what potential expenses could interrupt these things, like healthcare expenses and lifestyle expenses for how you wish to envision and actually live in retirement. Many people think, oh, my tax bracket's going to go down when I ultimately retire. And unfortunately, if you assume the same role from a living perspective as you did when you were working, when you're retired, your tax bracket is probably not going to go down all that much. And so tax efficiency is one of the things we focus on where you can get your monies from and how to entertain what that means to your household for income purposes. And so we want to consider other things like your longevity. Are you going to inherit any money eventually when your parents pass away? How much that withdrawal rate is, so we can back into, for example, the need for you to take a certain amount of risk to produce that kind of results so that you're comfortable during retirement. Are you planning on relocating? Maybe you want to move to a state that's closer to where your children and grandchildren are, or maybe there's a more favorable tax state to move into during retirement. And so these are all things, among others, that we want to consider. And so when we get into your pension, now we're talking about which option do you ultimately take. And so if you hadn't thought about this, it seems to be fairly straightforward when we ask, oh, I'm just going to take the lump sum. Oh, okay. That's great, but have you given consideration to taking the annuity payment as an example? Because maybe it's more advantageous for you to do so. And I know some of you are thinking, well, why on earth would I want to do that when there's a risk of, the company, and I don't like the company and I'm ready to pull out all my money and I want to control all my funds. Those are all fine reasons for you to take the lump sum and control your own funds. But we're just simply saying that part of the election of your pension should be to put a side-by-side comparison on what the annuity is doing for you versus what the lump sum may do for you over your lifetime, over your life expectancy, to consider if that is the, in fact, best thing for you to do. So another variable of the annuity option that goes very underutilized is the pension maximization option. And what this is a way for you to maximize your pension, right, in a general sense. But what we're talking about is the ability for you to get the maximum amount of income while you're alive and then transition the maximum amount of tax efficient money to your spouse when you die. So if you think about what happens when you elect a pension payment, you have an option to take the single life annuity, which is the biggest payment, right? But when you die, the payments stop. And your spouse obviously has to sign off on the fact that they know this is going to happen when you suffer an untimely death, meaning that they probably won't do that. And that might not even be the best option for you. So you would consider taking some form of a reduction so that your spouse would otherwise get a monthly payment. Well, what you're doing is you're effectively insuring your spouse through the pension. So maybe in consideration for your health and your status in life, it might be beneficial for you to consider doing that on your own, which is a form of what we call pension maximization. So you could build a structured plan that ensures that not only are you getting the maximum amount of money from the annuity payment from the plan itself, this would also be because you've considered the liquidity that you have for the rest of your life by not taking the lump sum, because you did a great job at saving money in your 401k and your outside investments, as an example. So the liquidity aspect of what you do with your pension matters. It matters a lot. And so considering all of these things into also things like what happens to your pension payment when you consider postponing the disbursement, because maybe you're trying to age out of the penalties that are involved in your pension plan because you're not 60 years old, as an example. And if doing so, you can do that by aging out of your penalties. That's great, but understand that you're absorbing something called interest rate risk, because if the interest rates go up, the value of your lump sum will go down. So these are all things to consider, obviously, when we're trying to determine, in this particular case, electing your pension. Calculating your after-tax investment returns is a big one, and it's because what we want to try to do is formulate a plan that has an investment objective that's consistent with supporting the income need that you have, and it also balances with the risk that you're willing or comfortable taking. And so these things need to be working and singing in tune with one another. And in order to do that, it takes some effort to figure out how to back into this, right? So we put some emphasis on trying to calculate what objective return needs to be applied to your portfolio in an effort to be consistent so that you have the most or favorable likelihood of never running out of money while you're alive, which is technically your biggest risk as a retiree. Obviously, reviewing your health insurance options, which encompasses a lot of things. So first and foremost, if your spouse has health insurance, as an example, we want to make sure that we're considering the options that are relevant to their plan and how it may interact with your current plan. And if, in fact, it makes sense to either transition to the other plan or to pick up your own retirement plan and supplement that with other options with respect to Medicare, depending on your age and these kind of things. And so we got to consider the retiree coverage, your spouse's policy, COBRA, for example, the health insurance marketplace if you're under 65, what kind of Medicare supplement options that you have if you're over age 65, if these plans consider HSA monies that you might have accumulated and saved over your working years. And then, of course, if you have an FSA, which those need to be spent, determining what, if any, procedures could potentially need to be done prior to you leaving the payroll, all things that should go on the agenda of what to do with respect to reviewing your health insurance options and what may need to happen even prior to you leaving the payroll. Investing or implementing tax smart strategies is a big priority for us. And so, for example, if you're under the age of 55, does it make sense for you to consider using a 72T payment or a post 55 payment as an income option? And these are both exception rules that the IRS has to allow you to gain penalty-free income from your retirement plans, even though you're not 59 and a half. And so I encourage you to watch one of the webinars we've done on a 72T or post 55 withdrawal option to give you an idea on how that works, because it may be something that you might want to consider. Utilizing net unrealized appreciation and understanding the intricacies of how this works is a big factor. We want to obviously tailor the contributions that you're making to your 401k, if it's at all possible, based on your tax bracket. Because if we can shelter some money and get it into a tax-free environment, it may be more advantageous for you to consider doing that. And then, of course, we talked a few minutes ago about if you were planning on moving to a different state and relocating and what the costs might be that are associated with that to implement that into our plan. That's something that we obviously want to give some consideration to as well. But most importantly, running a cash flow analysis is first and foremost. Okay, a cash flow analysis is going to determine and help us with a lot of things. Namely, should you take the lump sum or should you consider taking the annuity payment? Can we include what your healthcare premiums are and inflate those numbers in case healthcare gets sideways for us before you reach the age of 65? This is a big risk for a lot of people that are concerned about this. And so oftentimes we'll run a separate line item to show you the added expense of additional healthcare costs to see if your portfolio was getting upward pressure of additional costs that weren't even related to anything other than healthcare. That's probably something you should consider if this is important to you. You should consider determining what to do with your 401k and if it's best for you to leave your 401k proceeds at the employer that you worked for or move them into an IRA so that you can control those funds to be able to take penalty-free income from. Your income withdrawals are important because some plans only allow you to take so many withdrawals per year, which obviously matters in the event that you need to have flexibility with where you get your monies from. And determining all of these things will be incorporated into the cash flow analysis, taxes and penalties and growth opportunities and what your risk tolerance may need to look like in order to produce the kind of income that you're wanting to gain. It helps us build an allocation for your retirement plans. This is all incorporated into the significance or importance of running a cash flow analysis for sure. So here's what we know. Factually, 74% of people over the age of 50 do not have a written financial plan, okay? And frankly, there's no reason for this, folks, because people like us do it for free. It's a way for us to introduce our services to someone like you who may be interested in having a partner in retirement. And that's what we do for a living. So there's no reason for you not to take advantage of this, because the worst thing that could happen is we invest some time, we talk over these objectives and things with you so that you give us some information. And in the end, if you decide that you're going to manage your own money or you're going to do it with another advisor, if that's the case, it's quite okay, because our goal is to provide you as much value as humanly possible. Because when you talk to your friends or coworkers, you may very well say, you know what, I didn't even get a chance to do business with the retirement group, but they did everything they could to help me, and I think you should go talk to them, which is really, really important to us. And so if you hadn't heard of us before, we're a group of independent financial advisors that have a ton of experience in helping Fortune 500 company employees transition into a successful retirement. We got offices all across the country, and we know a ton about the specifics of your savings plans and your pension plans and your medical plans and things like this. And as I mentioned a few times, the cash flow analysis is probably going to be the thing that you gain most value of. So if you're willing to spend some time with us, we're willing to spend some time with you. Okay. You can schedule some time to do so by either reaching out to us at email. You can email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. You can call our 800 number, which is 800-900-5867. You can actually schedule some time to meet with one of our coworkers or myself by using a QR code to the left, which gets you access to the calendar. We can pick a time that's convenient for you. And this is also on the right QR code to get you to our LinkedIn page where there's company specific information that I would encourage you to follow if you're not already doing so. So with that, what I will do is pass the presentation back to Sam in an effort to answer as many questions as we have time for today. Sam?
Hey, Patrick. Yes, thank you so much for all of that information. Let's try to answer these three questions.
Okay.
Number one, back to the 4% rule. What happens if the market cools off for a while? How does it affect the situation?
Yeah, good question. So a really balanced design from an income perspective based on your withdrawal rate. We talked about this 4% rule for a general example. And if you do any general research, you'll find that, people often refer to this 4% rule, and that's the percentage of what you remove from your portfolio, right? And everything is great when the markets are going up, right? And that's hopefully what we want to have happen consistently over your life expectancy. But we all know that the markets don't do that, and we don't necessarily have good years from time to time. And so, what that might mean to you is if you build guardrails into your portfolio, you would then pick those years to make adjustments to transition your withdrawal rate downward to help compensate for the lack of performance in your portfolio, right? So, what's happening is the idea behind guardrails is to spend less when markets are poor and spend more when markets are up. So, for example, if you're thinking about going to Europe and the trip to Europe is going to cost you and your family $15,000, we might want to consider doing that in a year where you're having success in the market so that you can take profits off of some of the trades that you could make in an effort to pay for the trip. Okay. Whereas maybe it's not an ideal time to go to Europe if our portfolio is suffering because the world markets are suffering, plus we're continuing to take out money to help support our normal income stream. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, number two, how do I prepare for inheriting something? Should I approach it differently or incorporate it into my regular retirement planning?
Boy, this is a great question, right? There's so many variables that are relevant to this question. Here's what I think in general. I think that if you want to be conservative, what you do is you run the cash flow analysis and all of your retirement projections without assuming that you inherit a nickel. Okay. And then put that next to the theory of you're going to inherit a certain amount of money that you may inherit, and do that at a given time in 5-10 years from now, or whatever the case may be, so you can see what kind of impact that might have to your overall cash flow and net worth and withdrawal strategies. I think you want to be very careful about utilizing the success of knowing you're going to have an inheritance and incorporating that into your existing plan. In other words, if your family is still alive, mom, dad, grandparents, or whoever it may be, it's going to be unlikely that you can count on that money starting next year, for example, as a way to incorporate that into your income flows. So my theory has always been be conservative and do a plan without the inheritance. And then if you want to see what the inheritance looks like to potentially inflate the withdrawals that you're going to potentially take, then so be it. You can do that after the fact, and you can run two plans.
All righty, Patrick, thank you. We're going to do one more. How do I go about putting these safeguards in place for my retirement account, and how does it operate?
So great question. This is a twofold question. There's a number of intricacies to this. So first of all, it depends on if you're using a 72T or a post 55 payment, right? Because 72T, as an example, is a withdrawal strategy that you're using that's a systematic amount that you take out every month for at least 5 years or until you're 59 and a half, whichever is long. So we have to be really careful about what the withdrawal strategy change might mean to that, because when you make changes to that, it affects you and you're ultimately penalized on the withdrawals that you take out. So you don't want to do that, right? But assuming that we're in what we call the free roll period, which is after 59 and a half, where there's no IRS stipulations on how you get your money, as far as the tax deferred monies from your pensions and 401ks and stuff, then what you would consider is the mention I made with spending more on the years that are positive and spending less when the years are negative. And unfortunately, what it really requires is some discipline on your part to change to change the withdrawals accordingly, right? So this is the importance of the annual review that we do with you, if we're helping you, which is to help implement what the next 12 months might look like, right? So if we just came out of a market that was not as successful as we would have otherwise liked, then we may put the brakes on some of these other added expenses that we had planned for the following year and put them off to another year, like that trip to Europe, as I mentioned. Maybe we can postpone that for 12 months and consider what the following year might mean to our overall net worth. And so the guardrails are simply a way to monitor that if percentage wise you're removing so much from your portfolio and the markets go down, you choose to pull back from what you're removing, and it therefore then relates to a lesser percentage of a lesser value in your portfolio. So I hope that makes sense.
All right, Patrick, thank you. That was all we had time for today. I wanted to thank Patrick first and foremost for being here with me today. And we want to thank you guys for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Everyone have a great day. Thanks for your time.
Bye.